Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Freedom. Yes, the Bitcoin art is art has been rebranded now to the Art of Freedom. It was a kind of a thorough process of rebranding, but where I kind of had a shower, and then by the time I finished the shower, I had the shower thoughts, and then thought, oh, what are we about? We're about freedom here, and we're about making art, and we're in Bitcoin. So. Hope you all had a wonderful creative week. Florencia, are you there?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Um,
Awesome. What have you been up to this week?
uh, what I've been up to last week?
Yeah, in the last week. Yeah.
I'm creating a new series of screen prints, two series. So I hope I get to when I'm done, you'll be the first to know, so I can share it maybe here. And yeah, mainly that and just working. How about you?
Yeah, standard thing. Yeah, just working on some art now at the moment. Got a piece released next week. It's an Icarus card. So I don't know if anybody's heard of them. But they're quite old kind of cards that store Bitcoin, and the whole idea is you see the price go up. Bit collectible. They asked me to be part of the halving project, which the halving edition, which was a real. I'm humbled to do that, and yeah, so hopefully that's out. I believe on the Bitcoin Talk forums next week. So that's what I've been doing, and then just creating loads of ideas. Really, just it's just never ending, isn't it?
Yeah, very cool. Very cool to hear that you have a new pieces coming up. It's not always that easy. I don't know if you find it that way. Sometimes I struggle with like not seeing new pieces, and it's just that part of the process is so like invisible, and then when you have the actual piece, is like it goes so fast, and then you start all over again.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like these highs, isn't it? Where you go through and you exhibit your work, and that's the kind of exhilaration, isn't it, of months and months of planning and learning new techniques, trying stuff. So it's really cool when it does come out, and then you're kind of a bit nervous of how well it's going to be received. But generally, the Bitcoin community, well, most I would say the Bitcoin community is really cool at giving constructive feedback and praise as well. So it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I wanna invite Chris here now to talk to us. Like, welcome, Chris. And how are you doing?
Hi, Florencia and Rebel. Good to be here. I'm doing great.
How was your creative week?
My creative week. Oof. I don't know if I could go out. It's only Monday, so I still have time. But yeah, I don't know if I've really been able to flex my creative juices recently. It's been much more kind of grinding through operations, which I guess can have its own creative components, but not the same level of creativity that the two of you go through.
I don't know, Chris. Don't put yourself down there. I'm sure to get around some of those problems, there you need to be incredibly creative. And running Scarce City, and what we'll go on to talk about a lot today, which is, I believe, the Scarce City record bid of or auction. Um, that must have been that must have been for you almost like your art piece going out for display in the open in the galleries. That must have been an incredibly I don't know, nerve wracking, but the emotions must have been going crazy this week.
Yeah, it was certainly a roller coaster. I mean, first of all, it was just so cool to be able to take part in a sale like that for such an iconic piece, and we can get, we can unpack that a whole bunch. So from right from the first conversations with Bitcoin Sign Guy, it's been just such an honor to be part of that experience. But the auction itself, it was a 7-day auction, which I don't know if we've ever done that. So that was interesting, and just kept us on our toes for longer than usual. And, as any of who've been part of an auction, it's it's not the same, but it's somewhat similar on our end. You can't really relax when there's big auctions going on. So it kept us alert for a long time, and then it stayed pretty active, I'd say, throughout the 7 days. So there was plenty to keep up to date with as it rolled through. But it was really, the final hours, as tends to happen, and really the final 15 minutes where things got really crazy. And, there was some drama there, which we can get into if you want. Definitely, always a curveball with the really big auctions. But most importantly, just ended up being a tremendous finish. Just was totally blown away. When these things happen, though, it's like we're so wrapped up in just like making sure everything's under control that there's not really like much of a celebration, to be honest. It's like the celebration is just like taking a deep breath and thanking God that everything is okay. Because even after the auction, there's some big transfers of Bitcoin that have to happen in multiple directions, and that's something that we have to stay very much sober for. But it also led to some interesting context of meeting the buyer and getting a little bit of his story. But all in all, like it now after having a few days to sit back, it's certainly we're just kind of just filled with gratitude. And as you said, I guess it's a huge milestone for us, not just in like the numbers, but more so in just auctioning off such an iconic, call it artwork. I certainly call it artwork, but call it collectible, call it memorabilia, whatever you want to call it. Such an important piece of Bitcoin history. So it's just so cool to be part of that.
Yeah, it is one of the key parts of Bitcoin history. So I think before we actually go into the story of how it all happened, Chris, we should start with the mythical item itself. What is it, and why is it so important to Bitcoin?
Well, it's the Bitcoin sign, and it's for those who aren't familiar, it's the buy Bitcoin sign that the Bitcoin sign guy, who's I don't want to say his name, but he's pretty doxed, so you could find out if you really tried hard enough. He was sitting in a congressional room. I'm not exactly sure what the hearing was. It was in 2007, I believe, June, and Janet Yellen was appearing before Congress, answering a bunch of questions from Congress members, and he just happened to be sitting in the camera view behind Janet Yellen as she was speaking, and had the wherewithal to sketch up a buy Bitcoin lettering saying buy Bitcoin on a yellow line notepad and throw it up in front of the camera as she was speaking. And that was there was so much kind of serendipity already at that point, but what's kind of just made it extra special is the image that ended up being circulated around. At the time that he was showing the sign, there was a caption at the bottom of the screen that said something along the lines of, Janet Yellen says that there's no reason to audit the Fed. So just like, perfect serendipity on so many levels that came together. But it all started with Bitcoin sign guy, finding himself in that room, which is an accomplishment of its own, but then also just having the balls to take advantage of that moment and throw up that sign, or create that sign on the fly, throw it up. It was a huge risk on his part. He was there as part of an internship with a pretty high profile institution, and he risked it all in that moment. I think he ended up losing that job. I think he ended up finding another one right afterwards with an institution that appreciated the moment. But it's I think it's just important to recognize the courage that was actually required in that moment. And then it's just like so much of any meme, so many incredible moments go just underlooked. In this moment, people noticed, and the snapshots were taken, and it was circulated throughout the internet, and it's probably one. I can only imagine how many impressions that image has, or that video as well. Like, certainly tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe a billion, who knows. Like, it just took on an entire life of its own as far as a meme, and has been turned, so many derivatives of that moment have been created from artists or just memers, and it's become solidified as such an important part of Bitcoin history.
I find interesting what you said at the beginning, like to wonder if this is art or not, like the object itself. But I think it's more like the object. Of course, it's like it's now a very important piece of Bitcoin history. But I think the action that, like what you were just describing, itself is like, it's like the art part of this, like the guy having the balls to do it, coming up with the idea, like thinking fast and like figuring out. And then I also have like this idea of how he's smiling, like in the actual picture that's got viral. It's also like, I think it's very important, like the attitude he had, what he's like transmitting, like he's telling you buy Bitcoin with such a friendly face, like telling you like you like you said, like the caption out down there is like what Janet Yellen is saying, and this guy like offering you the easiest and friendliest solution. I feel like the whole thing is super artistic, and also what's giving it so much importance is, as you said, like it got to reach out a lot of people. Like I remember when I was just entering the space, it might have been one of the first things that I saw that I thought, like, this is pop culture, so iconic. And yeah, I really love like the whole thing, like the aura or the spirit of this whole intervention. And yeah, it's fun to wonder, like then you have to start wondering, like, what is art? If you're starting to, like, I saw some people commenting like this is not art, or why shouldn't have paid that much for this or not, like that kind of discussion. And I find it so funny and silly, and like as if the guy wasn't free to pay whatever he wanted for the sign.
Yeah, there's so much there. On the question, is it art? I mean, certainly it's performance art, right? Like, taking a provocative action to send a message that is just so widely received and has so much uh, creates so much emotion. Like, that is an act of art without a doubt. Now you can make a separate argument about the notepad, but whatever. It's like, obviously it's an important artifact. I don't think you can argue that. But it's so funny. It's interesting hearing you talk about the smile that he has, and there's so many like simple things that can go overlooked, but like we're like super critical to that moment. So yeah, the smile. Marcus Connor, the roller coaster guy creator, he like put together this kind of analysis of the lettering the font. And Marcus is a world-class designer, which many people don't know. So just the font and lettering of the letters by Bitcoin, he appreciated, which to me, anything he says about that, it's you have to respect it. But then also just like, the words buy Bitcoin, like he could have, he could have said many things. He could have written many different things on that notepad, but buy Bitcoin in that setting is kind of just like the most succinct way to send the message, to everybody watching. And it just fits so perfectly. So there's a lot of like really small decisions which it's easy to overlook, but just create all came together to create such a special moment there. And Florencia, you talked about how that was an important moment for you coming into the space. Same for me. I came into the space 2017, and I think that was like right when I was coming into the space, and I remember seeing it early on, but I didn't really appreciate it because I was so fresh and I was just like trying to understand what was going on. But seeing something like that to someone coming into the space, I think was really important. And it's like, it's also just trying to like comprehend the significance of the moment in the history of Bitcoin. Like some people have called it by Magna Carta Bitcoin, Declaration of Independence of Bitcoin. But to me, it's like, what's the real significance of that moment? It was the presence of Bitcoin in the real world, like in the lion's den of the establishment, right? Like a congressional room with Janet Yellen. It's kind of like, if I had to make a historical parallel, the one that comes to mind is like Martin Luther and whatever, the 95 thesis on the church wall. Like he's like, within the church walls there, with, obviously a much more mimetic um, couple of words, but it has that kind of symbolism, right? It's like, I can't think of another moment that better represents Bitcoin breaking out of, the proverbial walls of the internet and breaking into, the walls of the main street. I can't think of a better moment that represents that. And that's huge. Like, especially, and you consider the timing of it too, like 2017 June, like this was like the historic run that brought in so many people. Like Bitcoin was $2,000 at that time and went on to hit $20,000 just a few months later. So like the timing of that moment also could not be better. So there's just so many interesting components of the moment that just make it so significant. And I think it's a moment that we'll continue to reflect back on, and we'll continue to gain appreciation over time as Bitcoin becomes more important. And I think people, whether it's just the moment or the art pad, I think people will recognize it as art more and more over time.
I agree, Chris. I think it's just such a seminal moment in the history of Bitcoin, and even today, in 2024, a lot of people know about Bitcoin. It's I say relatively mainstream, but they've heard of it. Back then, it was still kind of uh, in the shadows a little bit. And as you said, that bringing that almost like the coming of age kind of, or the hero's journey of Bitcoin, the kind of, it's just finding its feet, finding its power a little bit. And I think that capsulated that moment. What I am incredibly surprised at is how did the actual pad then get from that congressional hearing, and first of all, him keeping it. I mean, that's incredible, and maybe even getting it out the building without kind of without any interference. How did it get from there 2017 and the story of the piece there up until kind of the auction this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd really be the sign guy who could tell the story better, but I think I've heard it a couple of times to where I can give it at least a decent account of the provenance. But what happened shortly after he showed that sign, and I saw a picture or a video of this that someone comes up to him and escorts him out of the building. So that's what happened next, and then he tells the story of whatever going back to his apartment, or actually maybe going to work, because I think that was first thing in the morning. And yeah, I don't know how he kept the notepad. I guess no one just, the security guards or whatever probably just didn't think about it because they just didn't really take it seriously. So yeah, he was somehow able to keep it through leaving the room. Went on with his day. I think he was, let go from his job shortly after. I think he got a new job, like, I don't know if it was like the same day or very shortly after that. So I think he was like, I think he might have like changed jobs like later in that day, if I remember correctly. And then, if I recall, the meme started circulating around the internet very quickly. And he became aware of that. There was some kind of drama involved where, like, someone was like, I don't know, impersonating him, or somehow like taking like fake donations to like a scam account related to it. So for whatever reason, there was, I don't have the details there, but there was something like that happening. And for that reason, he posted a picture on Twitter with the sign as well as a Bitcoin address. And I'm sure he was like happy to take donations, but part of it was kind of just as like a timestamp and provenance, which actually holds up as a pretty strong, authentication of the moment to this day. And that you can find that picture. It's on the auction page, and he ended up receiving a whole bunch of donations to that Bitcoin address, which again, it's like that's a pretty good timestamp, right? Like as soon as those transactions started to hit that address, like that moment happened. Those transactions came in pretty soon after the moment. But I don't think he thought too much about the significance of the physical object. He actually ripped out the page by Bitcoin, and you'll see that in the photo that I'm talking about here. I don't know why exactly, but obviously he wasn't thinking too much about preserving the notebook at that time. He later went on to somehow reattach that page into the original notebook to try to maintain the original state of the notebook. So I can't imagine that he was thinking too much about it as such a valuable object at that time. And from there, he says he basically put the notepad in a closet, and it sat there for a long time. And in his own words, he says it was haunting him. He did go on to create 21 limited editions, which are just replicas, limited edition replicas of the notepad. But he signed and numbered those, and he sold those throughout the years, or I think gave some of them away. So those have been circulating around. But during all that time, the original was basically just sitting in a closet, and he says it's just haunting him. And when he first approached me about doing the sale, he's like, I just got to get this thing out of my closet.
That's amazing. I love it. I was just having a bit of a clear out around the house, and I just had this sign that was lurking there. So Bitcoin sign guy then approached you, and then obviously did you think at that point this could be potentially, well, one of or the largest auction that was held in Scarce City. Did as soon as you started kind of those conversations, did you know the auction would be as big as it was?
Certainly not in, final auction price terms. I don't think anyone expected that. But I from the beginning, I did see it as I couldn't think of like a more important historical object that we had auctioned. Of course, we've auctioned off many incredible artworks, but as far again as in the context of the history of Bitcoin and an artifact that's kind of as sacred as that notepad, like that was I was very much aware of the importance of it. So of course, we wanted to do anything that we could to be a part of it, and sign guy, he had many options. Like he had talked to Christie's, Sotheby's, they were willing to do it, and he chose to do it with us, which is amazing, and credit to him from my biased perspective, but he wanted to do it in a way that was, as authentic to Bitcoin as possible, and he felt like we were the best option for that, and he traded off, a ton of probably extra publicity that would have come from Sotheby's or Christie's or whatever, to do it with us. So again, just like super grateful that he made that decision.
Do you think this moment for Scarce City will bring like changes? Like how do you see this this auction impacting you guys, or how do you feel about it? Like now that it's all already like happened, and yeah, we have like the result of the auction and everything.
I don't know if it changes that much for us. I mean, of course, it's great recognition, great publicity, adds some level of credibility to us, which is we certainly appreciate. I think what I'm actually most hopeful for is that it brings more appreciation to all Bitcoin artifacts, call it art, collectibles, whatever it may be. And because there's just so much, obviously that's what we're here for. Like there's so much amazing artistic talent in this space that's devoted to Bitcoin, and a lot of it goes underappreciated. And my hope is that a moment like this can get the attention of a lot of people and motivate them to explore what else is out there as far as physical representations of Bitcoin. And I hope that many of the artists are the benefit from that newfound appreciation. But we'll see. It's still early. I certainly hope that to be the case.
Going back to the auction, so it started off, I believe, you combined forces with PubKey, and the sign was actually actually on display there for the most of the auction, if not all the auction. Yeah, how were they feeling around having such a priceless artifact kind of in their midst? And I got to be honest, I was looking at the pictures, and it almost was like anyone could go up and touch the sign. I obviously wasn't there at the time, but it comes considering the value of it. It was very very lightly guarded, but I'm sure like in the Bitcoin. There was like almost like an aura emanating from it, so I'm sure that protected it. But yeah, how talk us through the motions as the auction was going on, and your feelings, and the kind of the journey the piece went through, throughout the auction, the 7-day auction.
Yeah, so I wasn't directly involved in really any of that, believe it or not. So the Bitcoin sign guy is just happens to be a frequent attendee of PubKey and knows the owner Thomas Paccia, who, sorry, I'm butchering his last name, I'm sure, really well, and they're really good friends. And PubKey always like it just makes so much sense for them to showcase this, especially since they're kind of located in similar areas and are together so often. But they're just like so they're always if you follow their Twitter account, they're like always on top of what's going on and always find a way to be a part of it in a really authentic way. So it came together really nicely that they put in tremendous effort to make an event out of it at their bar. Put out there just tons of promotion throughout the auction, and I saw it showcased there. It was framed. It seemed protected, but I certainly knowing the value after the fact, they probably would have taken some extra measures. But again, like no one was expecting the result, So these kind of just things can only be looked back on in hindsight. But yet, I don't know. It's just it really worked out to have that kind of physical representation of it. Like PubKey, if you haven't been there, you have to go for many reasons. But for one, like they just do such a great job with designing the layout in a very tasteful way that's authentic to Bitcoin. Like it's not like in your face Bitcoin. It's subtle references. There's Thomas, who's one of the co-founders, but there's also a guy who goes by the name of Jerk Milk, and Jerk Milk's like a design genius. Like when it comes to physical locations, like designing a bar, and you throw something at him like this, and he just makes it look beautiful and creates an amazing representation of it. And they just do such a great job with all types of IRL design elements of the bar. So certainly, if you're ever in New York, you got to pay homage to PubKey and experience it for yourself.
Were there any kind of squeaky bum moments then, Chris, where you thought, "Oh dear," or any moments where the auction perhaps brought up some surprises that you were not foreseeing throughout it, which made you sweat a little bit?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's always like the regular auction stress and uncertainty with like we just have no idea what's going to happen. I don't think people really appreciate that because they always like artists or creators or collectors come to us and they're like, how much do you think this will go for? And it's like, I have no idea, like because it's not like these are not like liquid markets, like liquid efficient markets. It comes down to what one, maybe two people are willing to bid it up to, and that's just an impossible thing to predict. So but also they're just being, I don't want to say high expectations, but just an appreciation for what this thing is. Like we wanted it to do well, and as expected with a 7-day auction, and it wasn't fireworks off the bat. It was kind of slow rolling. So there's a few days there towards the end where it's sitting at like, I don't know, 1-2 Bitcoin, and it's like, I mean, this could be it. Could just go for this, and that's maybe lower than expected, but we just still have to be happy with that. But there's of course kind of stress and jitters that come along with that. Now in the final, literally like final 3 minutes, there was a fat finger. So what I mean by that is the guy who ended up winning the auction, he was there at PubKey in real life bidding from his phone. And instead of an attempted bid of 10 Bitcoin, he added an extra 0 onto his bid. And if you're watching the website at that time, you saw it. There was a bid for 100 Bitcoin, which, not ideal. not an ideal thing. Now, it was an honest mistake. It was pretty clear what his intention was, and we got the message really quickly that it was meant to be a 10 Bitcoin bid, and it was a rare occurrence where we had to make a back end change and change the bid from 100 Bitcoin to 10 Bitcoin, and it ended up being totally fine. No one was upset about it. Everyone understood the situation, but obviously adds to it's a very stressful moment when you're watching the highest profile auction that we've done, and you see 100 Bitcoin bid up there. There was a scrambling moment, but thankfully the webmaster, our co-founder and CTO, he was on top of it and solved it really quickly, and the show went on. For another couple bids, and all's well that ends well, but it kept us on our toes till the very end there.
I think it was a show as well. I think the auction, just talking after to many people in the Bitcoin art community, it was just everyone had their eyes on it. It was just like, it was an incredible bit of theatre, to be perfectly frank, mate. It was you just watch it go, you go, wow, this is eye watering. This is incredible, just looking at the site as it was going up. But then I kind of because it was over here in the UK, it was around about 12 o'clock, something like that at night, and the adrenaline took me about an hour or so to kind of get that out of my system. Probably longer for you, I will say that. And then of course, like, I wake up the next day and I'm like, there was a picture of the winner on Twitter. I thought that was having a wind up to start with. There's an incredible story there. Can you tell me as much as you can about the winner of the auction that he wishes to be made public? Because I think that's a fascinating story in itself.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the winner. With I'm trying to even think of his bidder name. It was like Squirrel Master. And what I did find out is he also made a typo when he was typing in his bidder name on the auction. On the auction page, it's like Squirrek Master or something like that. It was supposed to be Squirrel Master, I think. I could even have that wrong, but the 100 Bitcoin fat finger was not the only fat finger. He had some issues typing on his phone. But yeah, afterwards, as he was sending a large amount of Bitcoin as part of the purchase, we were on the phone. I was on the phone, so I got a little bit of his background, passively through that experience. And of course, I don't want to share anything that's meant to be private or sensitive. But based on what I've already seen out there, that's already been made public. It's pretty clear that, like, this guy is just OG Bitcoiner who got in really early. But the more interesting part is that he's someone that no one's ever heard of. It was actually, I'll share this. I don't think this was made public, but I can't imagine anyone would care. What's the guy's name? One of the guys from Galaxy Digital was in the room, because there's a room upstairs in PubKey where they were doing the transaction, and he was introducing himself, and he's like, "Yeah, I work at Galaxy," and someone's like, "Yeah, Mike Novogratz, his company," and the winner's like, "Mike Novogratz, who's that?" And that was just like a funny moment, and it just kind of like showed, like, this guy is like, he's not in the mix, he's not on Twitter every day, on Bitcoin Twitter every day. He's certainly not participating in a lot of the the discussion, but he's an OG Bitcoiner, and it is cool to help you realize that there's probably a lot of them out there, a lot of people who just bought Bitcoin because they maybe understood it or wanted to just take part of the revolution, but they're not necessarily like loud on Twitter, right? It's easy, for those of us who are hyperactive on Twitter, as I certainly am, and probably most of us are, not like participating so much, but just like consuming, to think that the loud voices on Twitter represent Bitcoin. But that's just not true. No one represents Bitcoin. And there's a lot of people who hold Bitcoin and have had more conviction in Bitcoin than than most, especially most of the loud voices on Twitter. And the loud voices on Twitter don't speak for them. It's a good reminder that Bitcoin just is, and it's not what anyone says it is. It just is. So it was a really cool moment to be able to, understand a little bit about this guy and where he's coming from. Another thing that I did see shared out there, and it came up when we were on the call, is like, he's someone who's done jail time. I don't know what for. But obviously someone who has not had kind of like a picture perfect privileged life. He's gone through some rough times, but through all of that, he somehow was either smart, crazy, or some combination of both to buy a decent amount of Bitcoin very early and hold on to it, man. Like, I'm not that early, so I can't speak from personal experience, but it's not easy to hold Bitcoin through the crazy volatility. And the volatility we've seen since I've been involved, like, is nothing compared to what they experienced in the early years. And to be able to hold large amounts of it for such a long period of time through all of the ups and downs, like, that's just really something special. Again, I don't know if it's smart, crazy, or that's obviously some kind of combination of the two. So yeah, super interesting character. But I think the most important thing I took away from that is, like, he's not the only one, right? There's many other people out there like that, and it's just I think it's an important reminder of the vast types of people that are involved in this movement.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, Bitcoin really is for everyone, and you get these kind of surprises, and it's so amazing. I find it so curious that the guy was not into the the Bitcoin Twitter and stuff like that, but he valued the piece. So he valued this historic piece. So he's kind of involved in the culture that's evolving, but not in the same way as when you're like consuming the memes maybe all day, or I don't know. It's like a weird combination. I just want to say, everyone who is listening to us, that if you want to, this is an open conversation. If you want to ask questions or like take part in this, please make a, how is it? Ask us to to talk. And yeah, we welcome every question. And no, okay. So I was hoping someone.
I think the funny thing there as well, Chris, is with the winner as well. One of the stories I heard about him was after getting the 1 million pound sign. Then you'd think maybe you maybe go home in a tank or something, or with armed escorts or armed guards. But apparently, I don't know if this is true or not. But he just put it under his arm and then got an Uber out of it. Is that true?
I mean, again, I wasn't there, but I heard the same story, so I have to believe it is true. And based on my little conversation, getting to know the guy, it doesn't surprise me one bit. Yeah, it's kind of the perfect, like, representation of a Bitcoiner, right? Like, no matter how much Bitcoin you have, like, still don't. I mean, I guess obviously there are things you will spend it on, but there are things you really don't want to spend it on.
Definitely a true hodler there, that's for certain, and appreciates the finer things in life. We've got Asanoa, who's on speaker. Asanoa, the floor is yours, mate.
What's up, guys? How you doing? Thanks for letting me up.
Hey, what's up?
Chris, is that the biggest Was that the biggest sale on Scarce City ever?
It was. It was. It was in U.S. dollar terms. It was in Bitcoin terms, and not by much in Bitcoin terms. There was, Fractal Encrypt's full node. I believe it was number 6, if I'm getting that right. That was pretty close in Bitcoin terms. And I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but it was just under what this one went for. But Bitcoin was, certainly lower than what it is now. I can't remember what the price was. I want to say it was at like maybe half, or something like half the price that it is now. So about half the price in fiat terms. But yeah, that was a wild moment. Again, we didn't expect any of this. So it wasn't until those final bids were coming through that, I started seeing the numbers. I was like, wow, I think this, I think these are the highest numbers we've seen on our auction. I did check in that moment and confirm. So yeah, it's a record-breaking auction on all accounts for Scarce City.
That's so cool. I think it was really good for the whole Bitcoin art space and collectible space, especially the physical side of things. Kind of situation there. It was really exciting to watch. So yeah, just congratulations to everybody involved, man, and all of us, because I mean that's putting us, I think, more on the map, hopefully, within the physical Bitcoin art world and collectibles.
100%. Yeah, that's also what we're hoping for. Is we're hoping that the momentum continues, and the artists who day to day put their their heart and soul into creating artworks devoted to Bitcoin. We hope that the collectors and all of the Bitcoiners who became aware through that auction will appreciate the efforts and start collecting.
Yeah, and I think this might have opened the eyes of like normie world. Like you said, this guy could have gone to these other places, like a regular, like old school, I don't know how to call them, auctioning houses. But then he chose the Bitcoiner one, so very cool. And like I think this is something that will be bigger than just the Bitcoin space. I have that feeling.
Yeah, I think it has been interesting that I guess I don't know what to call them either besides Sotheby's and Christie's, but I guess the traditional auction houses, they have participated in I guess not so much the physical Bitcoin artworks, but certainly the the NFTs, whether on Bitcoin or otherwise. So they have been, at least exploring the scene. But I think this at least contributes to more awareness from more of the mainstream art world or art and collectible world. And what I would like to see, what I really hope to see, and this has kind of been the thesis from the beginning of co-founding Scarce City, is that the definition of Bitcoin art broadens, right? Where it's not just about artwork that has a Bitcoin logo in different ways, but that it's artwork that symbolizes what Bitcoin represents. And that can mean a lot of different things. That's open to a wide array of interpretation, and that's why it's a great canvas for art. But I think on the most fundamental level, it's freedom. So I would love to see, I really hope to see a movement of art that just represents Bitcoin's ideals in different ways, in more subtle ways. I hope to see the space evolve in that way, and I really hope to see it not just be kind of like a niche thing. I really hope to see this to become the dominant art movement at some point of the mainstream. I think that would, obviously that would art represents culture, and that would symbolize a really strong culture for our future.
I so deeply agree with everything you're saying. And it's interesting to think and exciting to think that, in a sense, any artwork that's sold for Bitcoin as the form of payment for that art is Bitcoin artwork, and that it's the possibilities are so endless with it and what it can become.
Yeah, we've tried to explore like what is Bitcoin art, and it's I think sometimes it just goes to down to that. Like, did you if you paid for it in Bitcoin, maybe that's like enough of a statement. Like the artist is taking Bitcoin as payment. But also, I think sometimes there is other stuff like what we're representing, and that's why I really love like this name, for example, that Rebel came up with for our weekly spaces, the art of freedom, because at the end, I think that maybe that's all. Like maybe it's even bigger than Bitcoin itself. It's freedom art, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree, French. I think it's Bitcoin has brought us together as a group of artists, but ultimately, I think like the movement, we're trying to kind of proliferate, trying to our vision of the future is that, I mean, one of freedom, um, and I think that's really really important component of the art, and and it is going against some of what's happening out in the world. There very much a microcosm of kind of what we've seen talked about today with the Bitcoin sign guy in Yellen's den, if you want to look at it like that. Yourself there, Chris, Scarce City, in the den of kind of Christie's and Sotheby's, etc. It's incredible that Bitcoin just keeps on winning all the time, which is a wonderful thing. I'm just wondering, Chris, what if you got any plans now for the future, any more kind of auctions on the horizons or events that the artist community that gathered here today should know about?
We're always doing auctions. You can almost always go to Scarce City and see what we have currently up for auction or on deck. And we're always trying to represent Bitcoin art and collectibles to the best of our ability, and be a stage for all types of Bitcoin artists to showcase their artwork. And that can be, the artists who are more established, who already have great reputations and followings and well-respected artworks, but also just up-and-coming artists. There's so many out there, so many talented, relatively unknown artists who are just captivated by Bitcoin and have devoted their creative energy towards Bitcoin. So, for example, we're doing one of our what we call bizarre collections of auctions this week, and there are some pieces from well-known artists. They're collector sales for from prints from Cryptograffiti or Pascal. I don't want to butcher Pascal's last name, but I think Pascal, he's pretty well known by that. But there's also artworks from a lot of artists that most people have probably not heard of. So that's important to us to give artists a chance to get their artwork out there, make some Bitcoin from it, but also in some cases, more importantly, just get some recognition for their creations. So we always have different types of auctions, collections going on. As far as anything big, I mean, look, the Bitcoin conference, we plan to participate in that, Nashville, in end of July. And the team there always does a great job curating that event and putting together a really nice gallery experience, which is really hard. It's hard to do for a conference, and they have their own constraints. You know, it's not like everything always goes perfectly according to plan, but within their constraints, they do a really great job. So looking forward to going to Nashville and being a part of that. And it's also more than anything, these types of conferences, it's a great opportunity for us to, first of all, get our team together. Our entire team will be there, which is like the first time that at least our current team will be all together, meeting together, but also an opportunity to see everybody else from the community, everybody else who can make it at least, a lot of the artists and collectors and just, it's also, we're talking a lot about bringing new people, new appreciators of this art, of this Bitcoin art into the space. This type of conference is, a great opportunity for that. There's a lot of kind of like Bitcoin curious people who want to go to this event because it does have that Super Bowl type of appeal. But a lot of them are kind of early in their journey, and they're exposed to Bitcoin art maybe for the first time through these experiences. And we've seen in the past that it's a great opportunity to, really get them excited about actually contributing to it by buying an artwork from an artist in the space. So I'd say that's the biggest event that we have on our horizon that we're most excited about.
And one question that has been asked by Mr. Kane Mayfield, and it has to be remarked upon, Chris, just before we close off today. He wishes to know about your one amazing hair care regime. And I don't know if anybody's met you in person, but you have one amazing mop of hair, my friend. So just before we leave, quick parting gift of how you care for your hair, please.
As soon as I heard Kane, I knew immediately it was going to be something about my hair. Much appreciated for the hair shout outs, Kane. I love you, man. Yeah, I don't know. I actually use I use Dr. Bronner's. It's like I don't even know. You can't even call it shampoo because I use it on my entire body. And yeah, it's like once, maybe twice a week if I'm lucky. So it's certainly I take a minimalist approach. Let's say that I try to keep it natural. Keep it natural. Try not to cut it too much. I'm on like the once a year cut right now, which is good. It's good. Good time saving. Good way to save some sats. Yeah, that's it, man. That's all I got for you.
I really appreciate that. Just like to make it clear that there are other brands available, but obviously that
I
is the
can't.
one.
I don't want any no. I'm weird about the ingredients. I got to check those ingredients. I got to know everything that's on there. I don't want any mystery ingredients.
Mate, if the Bitcoin BG says it's the way forward, then it must be the way forward, my friend. Really want to thank you for that. So just before we head off, and I go and shampoo my hair, and just want to say thank you so much to Chris for come in and speak to us this evening about. It's always a pleasure, always great to have a chat. I wish we'd do it more often. So thank you very much for your time. And I've also just put a link as well in the I think it's the nest or the comments below to our to Telegram, where we've got now a group, the Art of Freedom, as well. So if there's any other follow-ups from the actual discussion that you want to follow up with, a lot of our guests are already in there, so you can ask them on there. Thank you so much, Chris. Florencia, over to you to close it out.
No, thank you so much, Chris, for your time. Thank you, Asanoa, for joining us in this talk, and everyone listening. And yeah, we appreciate you so much because we love this space of like this idea of starting the week talking about art and Bitcoin, and this gives me so much joy, and so I'm very thankful. And anyone who wants to come and talk with us, just hit us with a DM. And now go have a very amazing and beautiful creative week.
Thank you so much, Rebel Florenzi. Thank you so much for putting this weekly spaces together. You know, it's just so important to give artists a platform, the creators in the space a platform, and appreciate all of what's happening in this space. So it's thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be on here. I've been wanting to come join since you started this space. This has been an amazing opportunity.
Thank you, Chris, and have a wonderful moisturized week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.